Welcome back to another episode of the Humble Hustle Podcast. We're your hosts, Nick Jones and Kayla Ebner.
Hello, hello.
And today we have Mr. Tim Bradley in the studio today.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Psyched to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Tim, can you kind of just introduce yourself and explain to our guests or explain to our audience who you are?
I'll do my best. So I'm Tim Bradley. I'm co-founder and executive producer of Pennant Video Company. We could probably get into the business side of it, but largely focused on middle of the funnel brand first video. So lots of production, motion design, but ultimately working with marketers on their middle of the funnel customer journey challenges that they have. But yeah, I mean, I've been in this career for a long time now. I think like 20 years. So a lot of different experiences early on, from freelance to, editing of TV shows to then I was at an agency for 12 years. And through all of that, was realizing I really needed to strike out on my own. So here we are, right? And this is the way.
I know, you'll never go back, right?
Never go back.
Never.
Yeah. One of my business partners said it best when I gave notice. He's like, well, that's the last time you'll have to have a conversation like that. I'm like, yep.
That hits.
That hits.
Wow.
Exactly. So yeah,
that's
awesome.
crazy. I never really had that, someone telling me that, because I left my previous company. It was like a tough split. I was in a startup video agency doing a lot of real estate marketing. So I didn't feel like I was growing as much creatively as I wanted to. And I was kind of a part of the build up of it. But I didn't feel like I was going to grow as much as I wanted to. And you really take a chance when you go out on your own. So it was really scary, especially as young as I am now. It's like, can I do this? And you really don't know until you're in it, how much fun it is, as stressful as it is.
Yeah, rewarding is the word I use a lot, and people immediately are like, "Oh, money." I'm like, well, no, it's rewarding for your sense of self and time, and just your ability to say yes and no to things, and those are all challenging in their own way. But when you look back and you're like, "No, I did this with these two hands," effectively is really really awesome.
And so you had, like you said, you had a lot of media agency experience, but then when you first took that step to create something on your own, was Pennant the first thing you did outside of that, or did you start something prior?
So to kick it way back to right out of college, and it was I went to school in New Hampshire actually, and where we are today, and after that moved to Lake Tahoe, California to do the snowboard thing, right? Just go for a winter.
That's
and
kind of fun.
Ended up being 4 amazing years. So I consider it kind of college again, just sort of real world. But yeah, it was one of those things where, I went to school for communications and, did radio and print and video. And so it was just very clear that that was the medium, not just for me, but for the formidable career path, And so anyway, when I moved to Lake Tahoe, it was classic, open that first credit card and drop a lot of money on a camera and the MacBook Pro. And it was cool, I'm in this. But that investment in myself, at that time, is just continues to sort of to work itself. It's amazing now, looking back. And, but yeah, you just because of that, it just shot every day, edited every day, and you just learn how to shoot for the edit and just how to how much footage you really need for anything, and how to craft story and how to produce. My last season there, we ended up doing a 24 episode webisode series with a couple pro snowboarders, and it went up on Trans World Snowboarding, which if you're in that scene is a pretty prominent media outlet. And it was just an amazing experience that again was just sort of owned by us and a couple guys really. And so just doing that day in and day out, when we moved back to Massachusetts, it's I don't know anything about this area despite growing up in it, kind of had to reinvent myself there. So did a bit of freelancing ended up going in-house at a production company that did like outdoor programming. So I edited a lot of like hunting and fishing shows, which like I like personally don't know much about, but you know, these like expeditions, they'd come back, you know, from whatever, like Prince Edward Island on a bluefin tuna, you know, that quest, and come back with like 40 hours of footage. And they'd be like, cool, we want you to make a 22-minute TV classic, show. And you're like, wow. Oh, okay. And you're like just learning like, how do you make just, you know, reeling footage of people reeling for hours and hours and hours interesting. So I just like learned a lot about like organization and story structure and just, you know, like just how to manage all of that in a timely way. Cause it was like, you got paid by the edit, you know what I mean? So it was like, you had to move quick and make decisions. Exactly. Yeah. So just kind of that decision making. I
think that's a good way to do it though. Kind of trial by fire, like being thrown in like that.
That's like the thing I tell a lot of, you know, early career folks is like, you just have to do a lot of it consistently, and like you're gonna make those mistakes, and that's like really very acceptable. Like it's okay, and just make them as quickly as you can is kind of my advice. And it's like once you make it, you're probably not gonna make that same mistake twice, and that's how you grow. And that sort of, you know, 10,000 hours mentality, right?
Yeah, no, my version of that was at my like beginning stages. I wanted to be a YouTuber.
Yep.
So I was making YouTube videos every week, like multiple videos a week, editing them as quickly as I could to, you know, keep up with these other like professional YouTubers, and editing like hundreds of my own YouTube videos. That's how I taught myself and fixed my mistakes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's, you know, you just get so sharp. The more you do consistently. And like, I love you say that, cause like as if my gray hair doesn't give it away. Like that's that kind of like generational swing we got here in the room. Cause like, when I then found this agency job on Craigslist, mind you, so like, you know, for video production specialist, it was the first like creative hire inside this burgeoning public relations agency, right? So they're like, here's a Canon 60D and a plastic tripod, and like we want to make brand videos. I'm like, okay, let's go, you know. But like this was 2011, so like YouTube was very much like in its infancy. Like it was still very like cat videos, and you know, it's like a couple of years old, right? And because of that, brands were like, well, we don't do we don't do advertising. It's like, well, it's different. And it's like, well, you know, kind of shiny object of like, yeah, let's make video. And it's like, what do you mean let's make a video? You know what I mean? It was like so just like perfectly vague at that time. But now it's just like, you know, it's so accessible to everyone. There's so many people that are like really, really talented. There's so many brands that like they live and breathe and sort of die by their video marketing strategies. And so, you know, and I think at the sort of turn of 2024, 2025, like people have really embraced that. And I think a lot of us like in this space are like really set up for success, but you gotta be consistent, right? And diligent.
Yeah,
for sure.
I feel like people are definitely finally realizing that the importance of video. Finally, it's
I mean, it's like the closest you can get to being in a room with somebody at the end of the day. Is it the back and forth discourse of like a conversation? No, but it's like received as closely as it can be. You know, then there's podcasts, but yeah,
exactly.
True. Yeah.
All right. So I guess to kind of tie back into Pennant here, and so something that I think, you know, our audience is for the most part on the younger side for sure, and more or less kind of one-man bands with their video or photo production companies. So unlike that, you have experience working with teams of people on much larger projects, not being necessarily a one-man band. So I think the differences that you can bring and the experiences that you can share are going to be some like really nice insights for both us and our listeners. So can you kind of explain what Pennant does and how you operate with a team of multiple people while you do it?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to take one step back with the agency experience, because I was at this agency. Again, I was the first creative hire. I was like the video guy, you know what I mean? So, but it was a very, entrepreneurial spirited place, which I loved. And because like I was not doing PR, there was like a lot of autonomy to learning and developing and like working in lockstep with my PR peers to like build something, right? So it's really a very condensed version, but over those 12 years, I built a team, or had the opportunity to build a team to, I think our peak, we were like 25 people. So it was like 8 motion designer animators, I think, 3 or 4 producers, 4 editors, DP, director. We did podcasts, we did live events. It was like very, very robust, and that was awesome and exciting. And I think still the challenge I'm having today is like, I was used to working at that sort of like that pace and clip of like a lot of volume of work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, the sort of reinvention of myself and like taking the leap, it was very clear, or at least like I had the confidence to do it because it was like, I was doing a lot of the business development, a lot of the marketing for the team, the team development, the client relations, a lot of the creative direction on some of the bigger projects. So it was just like, man, I'm doing all of this for somebody else's passive income. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh my gosh, like I have to take this chance. So right now we're about a year and a half into Pennant, and like the premise of Pennant was to be like really much more focused than I was previously. Because previously it was like we were serving, every type of brand from like startup to like literally like Fortune 5, right? And then all types of content from like internal communications, like a crazy amount of that. Like I'm always surprised at how much that there is on the brand side, right? To like recruiting and thought leadership, again, because this is sort of like heyday of like the emergence of LinkedIn and Facebook, and just kind of, we did a lot with early days in, what turned out to be influencer marketing,
Wow.
and just kind of, this curve and then, lots of traditional marketing content like explainers and product videos and demos and et cetera, et cetera. So, but what I found is that because we're servicing like everybody in so many different directions, so many different scales and maturity of that business, and it was just really hard to see like the impact and like the outcome of like what we were producing, right? Like, I don't know if you all feel this too, but it's like you take a ton of pride in the work that you're doing, and you're just like you're resourceful and creative, and you're here to tell the best like story you can, and based on the confines of like time and budget and resources, et cetera, right? But it's like you put your heart into this thing, and then you gotta like kill your darling, right? You gotta like send it out into the world, and you don't really know like how it performs and like what, again, that word like impact, right? So through those sort of dichotomies, right, of just sort of like me as a professional and then like the sort of the house of cards that I had built, like sort of inadvertently, right, it was like I wanted to reinvent this for more deliberate focus towards like the types of work we were doing and for the types of businesses that we know we can make that best impact. So now I'll finally get to your question of like Pennant, right? So the main things is we produce what we call the video marketing trifecta. Now, this is our sort of like IP, and I'll probably come back to this like the further in this conversation, but like that's how we're our terminology, that the point of it is to help us differentiate from like our competitors, right? So within the video marketing trifecta, we produce anthems, explainers, and endorsements, aka customer stories. These are all like very familiar to people. But again, with this premise is like anthems, those are your mission, values types of videos. Those express a brand's why, like why they exist, why the audience should care, right? Explainers, of course, are your what and your how, like what do you do and how you do it, like very, very straightforward. And then endorsements or customer stories, right, are really that validator, right? Like expressing, who this is for and where. So ultimately, the trifecta is this 3 legs of, a brand stool when it comes to their video marketing strategy to help them differentiate, demonstrate, and validate what they do. So that for me has just become a much like clearer sense of focus and story and like ability to go to market, right? And just like ultimately showcase and explain why we exist. And that really resonates with our marketers who are like living in this space all the time. And the space specifically is the middle of the funnel. So like for those folks, your audience that like are not marketers, like this is really just like a concept of how touch points occur for a brand and their prospective buyer. And like, I actually don't even know like who made it this visual of like a funnel, right? But like the notion is someone is unaware of you and then they're aware of you. And like, what are all those touch points that you are as a marketer are challenged to make with this potential customer to get them to convert and buy from you. And then, then you have another whole saga of like retaining them. Right. Yep. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Absolutely. For sure.
So anyway, so for us with Pennant, we're in it in the hardest phase of that journey. And it's like the middle of the funnel. Right. So like the advertisers of the world, they've sold a click, right? Like they've gotten this person from wherever they've, never heard of you to have heard of you. And now they're at the top of the middle of the funnel, but like the middle of the funnel effectively. And our charge is to help them, help our clients like educate their customers, inspire their customers, like validate what they're doing, right? To like ultimately make that sale. A lot of this sort of jargon is very like B2B or business to business oriented. And that's like largely where we play, or where we produce work. And again, that's by design, because like we're working with a lot of like the tough tech industry. So this is sort of like energy and bio and pharma and entities that just take like a long time to go from like proof of concept to being out in the wild, right? We also do a lot with cybersecurity and SaaS and these sort of like products that are a bit ethereal in nature, right? Where it's like it's behind a computer. Like how do you show and express that creatively? And we do that with motion design most of the time, right? And then health tech is a big one too. So like for us, it's this like there's a lot of like threes in my business, but like brands that their main goals are some combination of like safety, security, and sustainability, right? So it's just like, so as you can tell, a lot of like intention and focus is like where this pen is derived from and is working towards, and so while I was at like some semblance of like a mountain, peak or precipice, but before it's like back down the bottom, but just, hiking the route up again. Maybe it's a new mountain altogether, or whatever analogy you want to use. But as you can tell, I'm excited by it all.
Yeah.
It's just, it's that reinvention is with, a decades of knowledge is where I'm at now.
Yeah. I love the way you explain it, the trifecta and the verbiage, because I feel like for a lot of clients, when they get into video marketing and they're like finally ready and they're like, okay, we're going to do video, it can be overwhelming for them to understand, like, how do they step outside of themselves as an organization and an entity and explain what they do. So having you guys come in and actually have like a perfect system to explain that and be able to help them do that in such a clear way, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that's the challenge that like our industry is continually up against, is that there's like, the gurus or whatever that are like, here are the 10 videos your brand needs, right? And you're like, that is just not actually helpful, because this isn't a restaurant. We're not like asking you like, well, what flavor food do you want? It's like they want, I'm saying they, as in like our clients, like the brands, like they want results, right? And so it's like, you have to put on your strategy hat and like really ask like devil's advocate questions, or like, or kind of play dumb sometimes, like ask just questions to like, feed out like really where are they trying to go? Cause like there's, in any of these conversations, there's typically like two what's the word I'm looking for? Like prerogatives, I guess, right? There's like the brand and the business and like their prerogative, but then like the individual that you're working with too, right? So like for us, we work with a lot of product marketing managers, and like, man, those folks have it really, really tough. Like they have like, you know, dozens of plates spinning at any given time because they're responsible for like not only like how the product is sort of derived, working with the engineers or whatever, but then it's like, well, how are we actually positioning what this product does? And then how does that resonate as value to our buyers? And then like, you know, there's just so much. And so when it comes to video in particular, it's like, they're like, well, we just need it to work. And it's like, you have to be as the video producer, like help them understand and help them help you help them. Like, what are your actual goals in this case? And like, so for us with the Trifecta, it like helps synthesize it a little bit. Cause like, I don't know about you all, but there's a lot of, and usually these are brands that like, or individuals that don't have a ton of like experience with video marketing yet. Yeah. They'll be like, we want one video to do it all. And it's like, well, that's actually just a terrible investment. Exactly. Like it doesn't work like that, you know? So we're often advocating on their audience's behalf, right? Just like, and I have this saying that's like a little clunky, but like one of the best ways to like make your CEO or your boss happy is to like make your audience happy, right? Because like that has that cyclical effect. So yeah, just working very like audience first is huge and very important, which I'm sure you both agree, as I see you both nodding.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because right before you came in, we were recording a separate episode for our podcast, and that was all about client communication. Yeah. So as you're diving into this now, obviously, yeah, everything you said, it's so important to, you know, sometimes play devil's advocate and really help them understand. So when it comes to communicating these things to the client, is there anything in particular that you've like learned over the years on how to do it best?
Yeah. That is a perfectly loaded question, and I love it. But if I was going to like simplify it, it's like you have to come in bearing like two things. You have to come in with sympathy and you have to come in with empathy. So I'll start with the former. Like the sympathy is really for your client specifically, right? Like sympathizing, like, well, what are the other challenges they're up against, like right now? Like what pressures are on them from a, you know, like a financial or a boss or personal standpoint? Like all the, you know, like all of us, everybody has career ambitions, you know, and like sometimes I think us folks that like to push red buttons, like kind of forget that, right? And so that sympathy into understanding where they are in their own, you know, they being the client, like in their own goals, is huge, you know, from our perspective, right? To be like, cool, like I know where your head's at, I know how to approach this, and like I'm sympathetic to where you're trying to go. Now the empathy is for the audience, right? So like empathizing where they're at in their prerogative and their, you know, journey to buy whatever this thing is. It could be, you know, a can of like a drink, right? Or it could be SaaS, you know, like some software enterprise stuff, thing, right? So it's and that's a really interesting challenge, right? Because like sometimes these things are conflicting and like or there's friction, but you as a producer, like you have to enlighten your client into these like little bits of insights, especially when it comes to approach of like creative direction and like what is the aesthetic and like what is the story that is going to hit and empathize with your audience, right? So I know I'm using a lot of like yours and theirs like a little like asynchronously, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. No, finding the audience aspect of it, I feel like is something that's so lost in social media right now, because I think so many people are quick to, we've talked about this a lot, but like jump on the trends and like go viral, but that's not going to translate. Like, while it's great, we say happy accident if you go viral, like it's probably not going to translate into sales. So encouraging a business to, you know, not focus on necessarily like the virality of things and to actually look within and see, okay, like who am I trying to hit with this content, and what is going to hit the most, it's kind of hard to pull people out of that like instantaneous social media thing. I find that to be difficult these days.
You're totally right, because it's like that's that like the sort of lowest hanging fruit in a way. So like, because it's always on, like people are doom scrolling. You're just like, oh, like I need to be here all the time, and like trust me, like I'm the same way. Like just
I'm guilty.
Like LinkedIn, man, that place just like I don't know, I'm obsessed right now. But like the and that's the truth that you're speaking, right? Like I think the thing that especially early career folks like haven't had enough experience with yet is that like that's actually kind of a tactic. Like social media is a tactic to a strategy that's being derived like somewhere way up the food chain, or at least like months and months prior, right? It's like the execution of that strategy is through social media, right? And so, this was another like very deliberate thing with Pennant is that like we don't aspire to play in social media for that reason. And it's just like, it's so much churn and like quick pivot changing, and like your strategy might blow up at any given time because of like something that happened in the world that you don't really have like any control over. And so it's not without its merits. So do not get me wrong there. But like for us, we know that because the trifecta is aligned with strategy, like that's where it's really effective and impactful. Again, like using that word again. So to maybe make it a little more granular for your audience is like, these anthems, explainers, and endorsements, like they're really like, 1 to 2 minute videos, right? So they're not like these like grand exposés or anything, but it's just like that distillation and like synthesizing while synthesizing like brand messaging and positioning and identity and tone and all of that through what we're bringing to the table as the producers that we are with like writing and that creative development and direction and like all of the things from art direction through production, right? Is like it's challenging, right? And to do it with these like flagship assets is like even more challenging. But like that's where the challenge is so rewarding for us as like the creators, right? But the folks that we're working with, again, like they're so challenged by so many other things that are happening behind the scenes that they're like ultimately very grateful to have people that are like creative and care and want to produce the best outcomes, as well as like the thing, right? The video is just really, again, impactful for everybody. So that's I don't know. It's just something that I've learned throughout my career is that like it's so easy to be absorbed by like the next thing or the next like trend or the next like cool creative tool, right? And trust me, I'm guilty of that a lot too. But it's like it's such a constant evolution and change, and it's hard to keep pace as innovation abound, yada yada yada. Like that'll happen naturally, I think, like through the work and week over week and day over day. It's you can't like stress about that stuff because it'll just happen like bit like more organically. But if you can be the right partner, the strategic partner, like you have a better opportunity to like not only resonate with audiences, which is the thing we all like really care to do, but you also like have a long-standing relationship with the brand, and that's going to feed you more work, right? Yeah. And so it's very cyclical in that way, which is the name of the game.
I think a key takeaway from that was, for speaking for our audience specifically, is the empathy, sympathy piece, because I mean, we do our best to do what you said and like, understand where they're coming from. But I know a lot of people who are, in more experience than we are in our, the younger one-man bands who just don't know that having that level of understanding of your client goes so far and helps to strategize. So I think just putting that emphasis and telling people to really get an understanding of what they need, how you can help them, that empathy, sympathy piece, that's a huge takeaway.
Yeah, thank you. And like it might sound like whatever, like trite or something, but like the thing to remind you, the easiest thing to remind yourself of is like just be curious, like just ask why. ask why again, not to be like annoying, but to just like really make sure you understand like the core and, sort of initiatives or values or challenges at hand. And then that will just help you like understand your approach like so much better. Right. So like, the beauty of like this today is I'm sort of getting to talk to myself from, 10, 20 years ago, but it's like, it's not that you're like, maybe there's some, being naive in there, but I think it's more just like lack of courage and confidence to be like, well, I just kind of want to, I'll just do what they say and they'll be happy. 100%. And it's like, while it's not like totally wrong, it's like, it's very close to totally wrong, right? It's like, so just having the courage to be curious and like ask the right questions, that'll just inform your process better. It'll inform the creative better, and therefore will make better results, which will, ideally become repeat business. That's sort of land and expand mentality, right? So, yeah.
I think they see the money for the most part, and they just like, they want to do the job, like you said, do whatever the client wants. Tell me what you need, we'll do it. Boom, done. Give me money, move on. But they don't realize that, you're so involved with these brands. And for these beginners, they don't want to be involved because they don't think they need to be.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. Let's start with that. And I think it's just like, you also need to know a lot about yourself. And like that is tough when you haven't gotten the sort of 10,000 hours that everybody like talks about, right? And it's like you have to do the doing part too, right? But if you can include that curiosity and that confidence, like the confidence is a muscle, right? So you just kind of like you build that in tandem with the craft, like you're gonna crush it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of my clients that I work with, and I love this, they ask me, like, what do you think we need to do to convey this message? I think a lot of people don't know and are open to like being guided in that right direction, because we are the expert and we have like a really interesting lens of being on the outside of a business to look at it in a different way. Like earlier I was talking about a gym that I work with, and I work out at that gym. So like I'm a member of that gym, so I see it from that lens. So I can like kind of take a step outside of like the creative and be in there as like a person working out there and have both perspectives. But I do think that like I've found that a lot of people do have that like trust, and it does take trust both ways to kind of like have a good relationship.
Man, trust is the linchpin to all of this, right? It's like trust in yourself and your abilities, and that just comes with time and reps and like, making tons of mistakes, and just like that trust builds the confidence to like be curious, and then that trust, the reciprocation from the client side is huge. Because like I don't know, I'd say most of the time the folks that I'm talking to, like they're like, we have this type of objective. Like we want to, we're rebranding. So we want to be effective in how we do that and make that sort of proverbial splash when it comes out. Or we have this product that we need to sell this stuff. So we need help like educating our audience and like getting them excited to buy this or learn more, get a demo or whatever the sort of call to action is, right? And it's like, those are very, very different goals than like, I want to express that, I want to point a camera at this thing with this cool tool and like do this lighting gag. And like most of the time clients, like, it's not that they don't care. It's just that they're like so focused on like the end result.
Right.
But that is like a huge benefit as creatives, right? Because it's like, as long as that trust is there and you're giving them a really good experience, and I correlate experience with the process and creative process, like trust is built, rapport is there, you kind of get to flex creatively, and the client's happy at the like in the outcome, right? But if you're not asking the right questions early, like you're going on the wrong path, and that's tough to walk back from. And again, we all make mistakes, but like when trust is the center of all of this, you have to do right.
Mm-hmm. So when you have that trust, do and your team essentially have full creative control to get them to their end goal?
Yeah. So I'll give an example. So because it's like I'm working on it right now, but we started working with this one client. I'm going to try to keep it anonymous. We'll see how it goes. But like this one client a year ago, right? And so they had a physical product that they needed to help launch. So it was admittedly like a little clunky because it was like we're new to the brands. Like I knew him enough, but like the marketing manager was a sort of like extended friend of mine. Like there was a friendship there. And then there was a creative director. And so there was just like a lot of smaller competing interests, right? And I think the video is excellent, and it's like whatever, it's like won Telly Awards and stuff like that if you're into that type of thing.
Wow.
But it was just the process was like a little painful because there's a lot of learning, right? Like learning and there was degrees of separation from like the CEO who was like really the decision maker at the end of the day. And like we weren't at the table with the C-suite in that way. And so the first project is always clunky by comparison to the rest, right? But now we're on our fourth and we just basically are like, hey, this is our idea. There's a little appropriate back and forth into like the sort of choices of how to approach that. And now our plan is to just ship them a very polished V1 that's like, there's no surprises because it's like all of the stuff we said we were going to do. And this is a lot of what we really strive to do at Pennant is like give them our client the best first experience with this video possible. Like make this thing, it could go live today. There's risk in there, don't get me wrong, but it's like that is the best thing we can do is give our clients that opportunity to be objective and put themselves in their audience's shoes for that like first blush. So what I mean by that is like original score is in there. They haven't heard it yet. We've got all picture is basically locked. We're doing our like subtle VFX. Color's basically done. There's like nuance to like sound design and sort of like final mix and things that we'll do like after we get like approval. But based on our previous video experience, we did the same thing. There was no notes. They're just psyched. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, maybe you guys can check in with me next week and see if like this one actually worked out that same way because it's like in real time. But that's kind of the expectation that's been set at this point, right? It's like we're going to deliver, an excellent quality to the goals that we've all agreed on. And like if that trust is there, it's awesome. It works out for everybody at the end of the day because like clients not spinning their wheels or burning their hair or whatever analogy you want to use that we're not getting the job done right. And it's awesome, right? So what would a takeaway be, I guess, for the audience is like it all starts with those things we've been sort of beating a dead horse around, but remember that like your client is way too close to whatever it is, the subject matter is like, if I was going to distill down what you're saying, it's like, and because of that, you have to be devil's advocate on, or at least play to their audience's best interest. Right. And again, it's like, yeah, I could make you happy, but you're not the person buying this thing, right? So like I have to make the audience happy or intrigued or want to learn more to like get that conversion, which is really the thing we're all talking about here, right? So that that like confidence in your craft and your ability to like create something really awesome and give them your clients that best first impression possible, I think is huge because like not only does it help from like a experience standpoint and like a timeline standpoint, but usually review cycles are like pretty short and like
exactly. So
it's
like saves you some time.
Oh my gosh, so much time, right? Versus like early days, be like, what do you think of this like messaging cut that I have? And it's like, it just does, like clients like I don't know what I'm looking at. Like this is like so hard to see the forest for the trees, right?
I appreciate that method because I do something similar. I do try and deliver my V1 as almost finished as possible.
Could
be finished.
Yeah, I say like in our editor's mind's eye, like this could go live today.
Yeah.
Couple caveats, sound design, whatever it is, right? But
some
like
minor
for all
things here
intents
and
and
there.
purposes, yeah. Yep. No, it's really smart. Yeah.
Yeah, and creative control, I've spoken on this too. Like I feel like I thrive with my projects when I do have creative control. So yeah, gaining that trust initially, if I haven't worked with them before, is going to be key to give me the option to them allowing me to have the creative control.
Yes. And I think it's the understanding that the first project is inevitably going to be less smooth than the subsequent ones, but you have to get through.
And we communicate that,
totally.
Like it happens.
Yeah. No, and that's just it. It's down to expectations, right? So like communicating, they're like, hey, we're learning about you in real time. We're building this plane as we're flying it, but like, know that when we land this plane, it's going to be awesome. And then from there, like each one, like each version from there is just going to get whatever, faster, better, smarter, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That was a great analogy.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think, do we want to ask, I have something that's like a fun little thing to ask you at the end, but
okay.
If you could we've given a lot of advice, but if you could give another piece of advice to someone who is aspiring to be in a position that you are, maybe part of a smaller team or even a bigger team, like you've been, in all sorts of walks of life in this industry, is there anything that you could tell people, whether it's, we've talked about confidence, we've talked about communication, getting the reps in, like, is there anything else you would recommend to someone who's kind of starting out in this industry?
Yeah, sure. I'll just lean into your podcast title of Humble, right? So it's just like the constant reminder of yourself that like you are going to grow like professionally, in confidence and creative forever. And that's like why we love working in this industry, right? Is like this constant state of like learning and progression. Exactly. And I'm just like innovation is like, take it for what it's worth. It's like, well, you are like through tools and technique and all of this, right? So, but it's like realizing that you do not know everything. You're in this moment in time. You have the information that's in front of you. Like, make sound judgment based on that, right? Like, don't be like, oh, I'm just so far. You don't want to get over your skis, I guess, is the other analogy, right? And just like assuring that you're being smart to what you can talk about and what you can showcase and the confidence that you could bring to the table, right? Now, of course, you want to aspire to be bigger and better, and you have to take inherent risk like through all of that, but just like do it smart, because you don't want to, break down trust or burn a bridge or whatever when it's like that doesn't support growth in the way that you want it to,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes
I feel like
sense.
you need to be constantly growing. And so I don't know do you know Alex Hormozy? Have you heard of him?
I don't know if I have. Sorry.
He's like an online, he's kind of a guru type guy. And I'm not like a big Hormozy supporter, but I've heard him say this and I kind of agree. It's harsh, but he says sometimes your best isn't good enough and you need to your best needs to get better.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. No, I mean, that's that slice of humble pie, right? And I think some of the best ways to like check yourself in that, because it can be a slippery slope where suddenly you're like, I'm not good enough, and like that's not actually what we're saying.
Right.
So like it's like always striving for better is much different than like I'll never be good enough.
Exactly.
So it's just again, I think that word confidence is really huge in my book, in my world, and like that often is hand in hand with momentum, just sort of like building, like there's motivation and there's momentum. And I'm sort of like paraphrasing this from some other folks, but like motivation is the huge roller coaster, like the ebb and flow and just like day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, like based on many things of just, time and energy and exhaustion.
Always up and down, for sure.
Exactly. Whereas momentum is like, you want to build that to sustain your growth, right? So just sort of like through best practices or incremental habits that you've built for yourself that assure you're working towards that place you aspire to be always, right? Yeah. It's not a splash in the pan. It's like the diligence to like show up and do your biz dev, or like the diligence to show up and do your own marketing, to like put yourself on podcasts, to just show up. Is huge, and that's what builds that momentum, and that builds growth, like sustained over time.
Yeah.
So with sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, you can go ahead.
With confidence.
Wait, I have a question after.
Yeah. With confidence being such a key thing in all of this, like we've been asked this before. We've talked to people about it, but is there any real tangible thing that you can tell people to help them increase their confidence? Or is it really just, repetition, practice, things like that?
I mean, it is certainly both. I think one of the obvious things is like celebrating those small wins, right? And it can be the simplest thing. It could be like, cool, I had set a goal for myself to do, outreach to these 10 businesses or whatever. And I took the time to recognize like who's the person or persona like behind these businesses I need to talk to. I thoughtfully crafted whatever that thing is. Is it the DM? Is it the voicemail? Is it the email? Is it all of those? Like, is it the gift box? Like whatever it is, like, did you do those things? And it's like, even if no one responds to you, because like, well, that happens a lot, right?
Oh, believe me, I
totally. But like the win is in that you did that, right? Yeah. And so it's just like those little acknowledgments, right? Or just like, I think social media makes that like really difficult to understand, because it's like the vanity of a like or a heart or whatever is like, trust me, like I'm the same way. Like we're creatives, like we're there for like that gratification, but it's just kind of assuring that you're working towards like the long-term gratification versus the instant, right?
Yes.
And so I'm not sure if I'm being particularly tangible, but like, so
that is good.
But the small wins,
I like that.
But I think that includes like learning and being curious too, like listening to podcasts and like reading the books and like doing the courses, and like all those things don't seem like wins, but like they are, because you're building your own, craft and skill set and knowledge base to be a better person. So I think the other thing to do, which is a little that you have to be diligent on, and I'm personally not like super good at it, is that reflection, right? So like some people journal. I can't really get into that, and I should, but like I work with a coach, like a executive leadership coach, and we talk twice a week. And so those are, sorry, not twice a week, twice a month rather. And those are really great times for me to reflect, right? Yeah. So it's like the biggest thing is like takeaway on like, all right, well, how do I work towards that momentum? Like, what are those wins? What do those mean? Like, what is that feeling I've been having? And like, physical or emotional, it's like, if you feel that friction, like you got to lean into that, know? So sort of taking those moments to reflect, are super important. So what I would recommend is like, time blocking your calendar. Like we could get into that. That feels like it's a whole other path.
That goes with my question. That's perfect.
But like that exercise of like, cool, I'm going to block my whatever, like the first Friday of the month, I'm blocking that. I'm not doing productions that day. I'm not doing client calls that day. I'm not doing client work that day. I'm just like doing the thing I need to do to like better myself or better my business or better my solopreneurship or whatever it is, right? And like you have to protect that, and it's super hard to do difficult. When you're like the night before, you're like, oh God, I gotta do like this revision or whatever. But like you'll be so much more like rewarded and satisfied and like happy with your own sense of like self if you just protect that time, And so anyway, time is the biggest factor in all of this at the end of the day. So yeah, it's just taking the time and making the time to do that reflection, celebrate those small wins, talk to other people about this stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's just, confidence.
Yeah. Well, it's like the perfect segue, because something that I really have been struggling with lately is I'm busy, and I'm grateful to be busy, and I'm so happy and I'm lucky, but I'm having such a hard time doing like the working on the business.
Sure.
And doing this by yourself is so fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like, and I am so thankful for friends like Nick who I can like hash things out with. And it's important to have that circle, I feel like, because you have your family, you have your friends, but they don't necessarily understand. And so like having a creative circle has helped, but I guess, and we talked off the mic a little bit about like CRMs and making things efficient. So can you talk a little bit about like time management? And
sure.
You mentioned blocking off your calendar. So I do that once a week. Mondays, I try to make an office day. So like editing is all I do, organization, whatever. And I sometimes will book things in there.
Yeah.
So I need to be better about that, obviously. But like any other thoughts on time management?
Yeah, tons. But I'll try to keep it brief. First of all, give yourself some grace. Like that's kind of the biggest thing is like you set your goals. Did that goal go exactly as planned? No, but at least you're like executing on that goal, right? And that's like really what's most important. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors here, right? And even I struggle with this too, with like work and life, with like, 2 kids and my, my wife to assure we're in a good relationship, right? So it's like, I think starting with your like nucleus is really smart. So kind of like your partner, whatever it is, like have that weekly sort of like briefing of like, all right, like quite literally, how are we getting through this next week, right? Like what are the gotchas? What are the, like, how can we support each other in that sort of like the minutes, right? Like, for me, it's a little more tangible with like, my son has karate and my daughter has dance today, but I actually have to go to a networking event. So just kind of like how do we get through that, right? So there's less like ambiguity in your sort of life. Once your life is like reasonably like on the rails, like, then it's like, okay, work then actually fits in much better, right? Because you're not sort of like competing against your 2 interests, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, so then when you're into work, it's like, foundationally, you need sales. Like you need sales to thrive, survive, and grow, right? So like to each their own, but like that has to be at the forefront of your week at a minimum, if not your day. So for me, like, and again, like I give myself some grace, but like I have 8:30 to 10:30 blocked every day that just says business development. And like, I don't touch a client project until after that. Cause like, but for me, I know that that's cause like I'm a morning person and like I have the most sort of energy and I can give myself those sense of like the small wins or just see progress like tangibly, like through, again, like emails or DMs or doing like silly behind the scenes videos or LinkedIn posts or like whatever the thing is that is like progressing the sales factor and the marketing factor like of the business. Like again, to each their own, but like I do that first. It's like, cool. Like I know that is progress one way or the other. Then from there, it's like, great, like, how do I assure that I'm giving myself the time to do my own public relations or like do the reflection or do finances and, operations stuff and just like, but those 2, for my team, like we block those hours weeks in advance where it's like, okay, we have, for example, on Tuesdays, an ops jam meeting where it's like, we know that we've dedicated this 90 minutes to talk about the operations of this business. The benefit of that is like, yeah, cool, we're actually doing that in the moment, but it's also like the backside of when things come up, we don't feel like, we have to fix this right now. Like we have to like dive into like a solution this minute. It's like, nope, we acknowledge that whatever it is clunky. That's going to be on our agenda.
Add it to the list.
That's on the agenda for the meeting, right? So
yeah.
like, now that's me with a team, but like as a solopreneur too, it's like it can be very frantic if you're just trying to solve every little thing at every moment. And it's like, well, if you have these time blocks of like, I'm going to do finances at this moment of the week, I'm going to do operations this moment of the week, I'm going to do my marketing in this moment of the week. Like it helps you sort of sustain your energy of like, again, you're like, I have this idea for marketing. I'm like eager to jump into it right now. But it's like, nope, I'm going to park that idea. I'm going to execute on it on this day and time. So yeah. So like calendar has like these pillar days and moments where it's like, this is when this thing is going to happen. And then it's just the diligence and accountability to yourself to like, to actually do that, another whole thing. But
okay.
Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I definitely need to be better about honoring the time that I set aside for myself and even personally too, like, making time to get to the gym, take care of yourself personally, mentally, like all of that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can't show up like as whole as possible, there's either going to be a lot of regret or you just frustration or whatever. And it's like, and it's tough. And it's like, again, like I use the word grace more and more as like, as long as you're putting your best interest and intent in mind, and you're doing it, with sort of that courage and confidence again. And it's like, and you're honoring that time, like it's going to be good. It's just hard to see when you're in the day to day. And so like that reflection is a big part of it too.
Yeah.
A trick that I do for like daily time management is similar to you. I'm a morning person. So I know myself and I know what time of day I can be most productive. Yep. And it's from a book I read. I call it my green zone. So my morning, similar, kind of like, 8:30 to maybe 11 is my like prime time where I can do a lot. So what I do is I put any like heavy hitting tasks that I need to do for that day, I do first thing in the morning because I'm like energized and I'm ready to go. So then later on, maybe after lunch, I can get to the more like minuscule, like kind of tasking.
Shooting emails out.
Exactly. Small things like that I can do in my sleep.
The thing that, you absorb from like a professional development standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly I think learning that about yourself, like about like what time frame of the day where you feel most effective and efficient, you can really get a lot done in those hours.
I love all this because it is like, it's ownable. The other thing that I've learned, and my coach helped me through this, was like, there's also like practices or, I don't know, like things is not a very good word, but like there are moments in your day where you're feeling highs and lows, right? And some of that has to just do with the energy, or most of it has to just do with the energy, right? But like, what are the actions that you do daily or weekly that give you energy? You know what I mean? And like, that's like a very personal thing. And for some, for example, it's like, I love like figuring out lighting. Like I love editing, or I love, shooting this, whatever it is. Or like, I love designing. And it's like, you have to honor that too, because it's like those actions give you more energy. So like, despite the sort of the relative monotony of a day of like, cool, I know I'm a morning person, I know I'm an afternoon person or night person, whatever it is, like that is inherently true. But it's like within that, there are the things that also can give you energy or drain your energy. So he had reminded me that, because I was like, oh, I love doing like these types of things, and these other things like drain my energy. And it's like, well, instead of doing the draining the energy stuff first, because you're like, it's hard, I got to get out of the way. It's like, well, you could do the stuff that gives you energy first, and then use that energy to propel you into the things that don't,
That's a good point.
Yeah. And it's hard because it's like this whole career and what we do is like, there's so many variables, which is like exciting, and I assume gets us all out of the bed in the morning. It's like every day's a new adventure, but like, that sustainability of yourself is really, really important.
Yeah.
It's a nice reminder too, because I mean, to get back to, the reason why we are doing this, we like doing certain things in this creative industry. So when you have the opportunity to do those few things that give you the energy, go do those first. That's the reason you got into this in the first place.
Right. Yep. Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it, because I usually try to eat the frog. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. I was actually going to say that.
Yeah.
It is.
And sometimes you have to eat the frog. Frog's got to be eaten sometimes. But I like the idea of, okay, you can switch it up once in a while and do the thing that you're excited about first.
Yeah. Especially cool. If you need that burst of momentum building, right?
Right.
But yeah, and that's where this, for me, like leading the day with biz dev and, marketing and sales oriented things is like, it is difficult. So it's that toad, but it also shows the small wins, and it assures you're actually like putting your business's best interest in mind, or forward first, right? So it's sort of this Venn diagram in my mind. But yeah, some of it's like pretty draining, like, LinkedIn connection requests and DMs and stuff. It's like, I was like falling asleep doing those the other day. He's like, well, that would be a moment to like, well, why don't you edit that thing or like write that thing you've been aspiring to do, and then that'll bring energy back up to then go back to the diligent thing you got to do. Right. So
listening to you talk about that has made me realize that I think I sit on those things more often. Like the things that I'm excited about and want to do the most often get pushed to the side because I have, XYZ things that I need to edit for my client, or, emails, or I got to organize my books. Those are the things that I feel like I push to the side the most, which it's not great.
I feel like I'm the exact opposite.
Really?
Actually.
Wow.
Like, it's bad because I might not be prioritizing the things that I should on like a timeline perspective. But if I get something in that I'm really excited about and like a new project that I really want to do, and I have this like outstanding thing that I don't love doing, I will jump to the new one just to start the fun stuff.
It's fascinating in both ways.
It's so hard. And I think that's the like, not to get like too heady here, but like the societal challenge is that like people tell you it's supposed to be like this, or like, the courses, they tell you it's supposed to be like this. And it's like, yeah, but it is an individual decision with like individual circumstances and like skill sets and passions and all of it bundled up into one. But like, that's what also makes it really awesome and therefore unique, but it is like, when you're starting or you're just early in your career, you just don't know enough about yourself and like your like the inroads you want to take to your career yet. And that's like all okay. And that's why it's called a journey, and it's awesome.
Yes.
But yeah.
Great. So we've talked a lot about some heavy hitters here. Great tips,
amazing
which
insights.
has been amazing.
Thank you.
So I think to wrap it up, I know you had some like more lighthearted, fun things.
Nice.
So we can wrap it up here.
So we do this every so often where we talk about like hot takes of the industry or horror stories.
Okay.
Do you have any of those that you want to share?
That you're allowed to share, I
Yes.
guess. Better
No,
way
I mean, the hottest of hot takes is everything AI, right? So I don't know like how far down we want to go down there, but it's I've seen a lot throughout this career, right? Like, and there's always something, again, like innovative, whether you like it or not, that is like going to be introduced, and it has, and it's here to stay. But like, it's the understanding of the opportunities and its pitfalls, and seeing like sort of what's authentic or not, right? And it's like, especially like I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and it's like you can just tell like how much AI is being introduced to that space. And it's like, yeah, sure, it makes the waters like murkier and cringier abound, but then that's also like, cool, well, I know I'm doing the right thing, and like as long as I'm taking those actions to pursue what is like authentically right, then it's going to be cool. So yeah, I don't know. That wasn't so much of a hot take, but
no, AI is a hot topic. So you don't necessarily feel like it's a threat to our industry.
No, I mean, it is, but it's also, with any threat, there's other opportunities or, sort of quests, right? That sort of spur off of that. So it's just sort of being, I guess what I'm saying is like, it doesn't do you any good to just be like scared, right? So it's like, lean into some things,
embracing it.
That curiosity, right? So like, if you are leading with curiosity, you'll have a better understanding of like how it's actually going to impact what you do and impact decision making from there. I mean, that's really what you do every day, is just a series of decisions that are being made. So it's just understanding that about the topic, I guess, the hot topic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know too much about it. I mean, I use ChatGPT. We were talking about that, but
yeah, no, same. I mean,
that's the extent
of
the
research standpoint has a lot of benefits, but I mean, Google's basically in on it too. So again, it's like, it's just sort of, these are the times. Yeah.
Do you have any quick horror stories that you've experienced over the years?
I mean, I think this one might resonate with folks. So we had moved back from Lake Tahoe, and I was like, just full freelance. I was doing like everything, including, I did 2 weddings. Okay. So first wedding, fine. Second wedding, shooting the ceremony, kind of center of the aisle, like, recording it all.
Sure.
I still don't know to this day, like what happened, but like literally the battery just like fell out of the camera. And I'm like, how is that even possible? And so you know, and it had been recording for like whatever, like 20 minutes of this ceremony. And so I like plugged it back in, and like, sure enough, the file was like, that clip was corrupt. And I was like,
no.
Full panic sweat. Like what do I do? Like, do I just leave? Like, do I you just full bail, you know? I'm like, or do I just film the rest? And then it's like, cool. Like, worst case scenario, just hand over. Like, here's like all your footage. Like, here's a B-roll package. Like, put together something hypey and just like give it to them. Like, do not pay me because like this thing happened, right? So it's like really one of those, like, you know, do you run, or do you just like whatever, like bite the bullet and do it? So yeah, like did the whole thing, and then
so you didn't run.
Didn't run. Film the whole thing.
Right choice, I feel like.
Yeah, no, obviously. And yeah, but then I pulled the files in, and like, I forget exactly who I worked with, but like we were able to like make the file like uncorrupt and like usable.
Thank God.
And so like, you know, client had
no idea.
They had no idea, right? But I was also like, this is too stressful. Like I would much rather work with brands that do not have this sort of like emotional, you know, like ball that a wedding has, you know what I mean? So good on all the wedding videographers out there, because like, man, that is very emotionally packed type of experience.
It is definitely a different level of stress.
Yeah,
we
sure.
both do them, so
no, I know, that's why I'm
crazy.
like,
yeah,
man,
that was a good. So that was your last wedding you ever did?
Yeah, that was like 20 years ago. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, it is. It's totally stressful.
No, it was that long ago, but yeah, no, it was just crazy. I've never experienced anything like it since. So maybe saying this out loud now is the universe's way of saying like, don't get into this, you know, because like I've seen a lot of folks that they do pursue that because it's like, even if it's like a side hustle, it's like, it's pretty good money. And it's like, it's not like super difficult, like all things considered. Like, and I say that very politely, but
that's fair.
It's yeah, I don't know. I'm like glad it happened, but it was, as you can tell, I'm like still kind of stressed about it right now. Yeah.
PTSD.
Yeah, some trauma bonding happening here. Yeah.
So you mentioned Canon earlier. Are you still Canon, or are you Sony? Or what do you shoot?
All of it, honestly.
All of it? Okay.
Yeah, like
your team doesn't have any like universal.
We don't actually own anything, which is really an interesting thing for us at this point. So like typically we're working with a DP that owns some sort of camera package. So yeah, like Sony FX6 is like pretty common nowadays. The Red anything like Komodo, and then on the more premier projects we'll use like the Arri Alexa Mini or the 35 that's out. So really just depends on budget and sort of the like necessities and the creative ambitions, right? Like, is this that portfolio piece? Like, let's squeeze it a little more, you know? So yeah, it depends. But yeah, and then it's everything from like, you know, traditional sort of multicam interview thing to like working with cinema robots, you know, and like getting those sort of precise repeat motions that we need for like whatever VFX stuff and things like that. So yeah, it really runs the gamut, and for that reason we don't own anything, because it's just like every project sort of necessitates a different approach in that way. Yeah.
Interesting. I
guess to wrap it all up here, can you tell our audience, you know, where to find you?
Yeah, sure. Pennant.video is the website. Same with Instagram, although we don't use that like so often, mostly just like stories and sort of like behind the scenes stuff. And then LinkedIn, that's really the channel that I'm on primarily, and then Pennant too, right? Like a lot of sort of behind the scenes and tips. We're mostly, again, talking to those marketers, right? The product marketing managers and customer advocacy marketers and head of brand or like head of marketing types of folks. So, but I think there's a lot of insights that your audience can like take from those, just sort of like how to approach that type of world and B2B in particular, right? But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again for
thank you so much.
hopping on. It was very insightful.
So awesome. A lot of good takeaways. So thank you for being here.
Well, this is my pleasure, seriously. So thank you very much.
All right.
All right. So with that being said, we're going to wrap this episode up. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify. Follow us everywhere. Subscribe on YouTube. And we will see you in the next episode.